What happens when Hollywood's most fearless talk show host goes head-to-head with royalty over the most controversial topics of our time? You won't believe what unfolds when Prince Harry sits down with Bill Maher. For what was supposed to be a standard celebrity interview but quickly spirals into one of the most explosive confrontations in late-night television history. Tonight's episode delivered drama that nobody saw coming, with tensions escalating to a breaking point that left audiences stunned and one guest storming off the set in fury. The atmosphere in the studio was electric as Prince Harry made his entrance, waving to the audience with that familiar royal smile. Bill Maher, ever the gracious host, stood to greet him with a firm handshake and his trademark grin. The crowd erupted in applause as Harry settled into the guest chair, adjusting his jacket and flashing that charming smile that had won over millions worldwide. But beneath the surface pleasantries, something felt different tonight. Maher's eyes held a glint of mischief, and those who knew him well could sense he was ready to pounce. "Prince Harry, welcome to real time," Maher began, his voice carrying that familiar blend of warmth and barely contained irreverence. "I have to say, it's not every day we get actual royalty on the show. Though I suppose in America, we're all about overthrowing monarchies, right?" The audience chuckled, but Harry's smile flickered for just a moment. "Well, Bill, I think you'll find I'm not exactly your typical royal these days," he replied, his British accent crisp and confident. "I've been living the American dream, as they say." Maher leaned back in his chair, already sensing an opening. "The American dream, sure. But let's talk about the American nightmare you've been putting your family through. All this public drama tell-all books. The Netflix series, it's like watching a very expensive soap opera, except the actors are real people with real feelings." Harry's posture stiffened slightly, but he maintained his composure. "I think there's been a lot of misunderstanding about what Meghan and I have been trying to accomplish. We're simply trying to tell our truth and create positive change in the world." "Your truth," Maher repeated, emphasizing the words with air quotes. "See, that's where you lose me. Harry, there's not your truth and my truth. There's just the truth. And the truth is, you've been airing your family's dirty laundry in public for years now, making millions off of it while simultaneously claiming you want privacy." The audience fell silent, sensing the shift in tone. Harry's jaw tightened, and he leaned forward slightly. "With respect, Bill, I don't think you understand the full context of what we've been through. The media harassment, the racism my wife faced, the complete lack of support from the institution." "Oh, here we go," Maher interrupted, his voice rising with passion. "The racism card. Look, I'm not saying racism doesn't exist, of course it does. But you married into the most traditional, centuries-old institution on the planet, and then you act shocked when they don't immediately bend to your every whim. It's like joining the Marines and then complaining about the uniform." Harry's face reddened, and his voice grew sharper. "This isn't about uniforms, Bill. This is about my wife being driven to the point of having suicidal thoughts because of the treatment she received. This is about our son's security being taken away because we dared to step back from duties that were destroying our mental health." Maher leaned back. "And I'm sorry about that. Primera rea. Liame. Mental health is serious business. But let's be honest. How you've turned your pain into a brand. You've got book deals, streaming deals, speaking engagements. You're literally profiting off your family drama while claiming to be victims." The tension in the studio was palpable now. Audience members shifted uncomfortably in their seats, and even the camera operators seemed to sense they were witnessing something extraordinary. Harry's hands clenched into fists on his lap, and his voice carried a dangerous edge. "You think this is about money?" Harry asked, his voice low but filled with barely contained anger. "You think I wanted to leave everything I'd ever known, walk away from my family, my country, my duties for a paycheck?" "I think," Maher said, leaning forward with the intensity of a prosecutor making his closing argument, that you've been manipulated by people who saw dollar signs when they looked at you. I think you've been convinced that your family is the enemy when they're probably just trying to preserve an institution that's survived for 1,000 years. Harry shot to his feet, his chair scraping against the floor. Don't you dare bring my wife into this. Don't you dare suggest she manipulated me. You don't know her. You don't know us. And you certainly don't know what we've been through. Maher remained seated, but his voice grew louder, more defiant. I know what I see, Harry. I see a man who had everything: respect, purpose, a role in history, and threw it all away because he couldn't handle the pressure. And now you're trying to rewrite history to make yourself the hero of your own story. The audience was dead silent now. The usual laughter and applause replaced by an electric tension that seemed to charge the very air. Harry stood there, towering over Maher, his chest heaving with barely controlled fury. His hands trembled slightly, and those close enough could see the veins in his neck standing out prominently. You want to know about pressure? Harry's voice was now a dangerous whisper that somehow carried to every corner of the studio. Let me tell you about pressure. Pressure's walking behind your mother's coffin at 12 years old while the world watches. Pressure is having every relationship, every mistake, every human moment scrutinized and twisted by people who've never lived a day in your shoes. Maher's expression softened for just a moment, but then his combative instincts kicked back in. And I'm sorry for that loss, Harry. I really am. Diana was extraordinary. But you're not honoring her memory by tearing down everything she worked within the system to change. You're burning it all down and walking away. Harry's eyes flashed with something dangerous. Don't you dare invoke my mother's name to justify your ignorance. She would have understood exactly why we had to leave. She would have supported us getting away from the same institution that failed to protect her. The confrontation was reaching a fever pitch, and everyone in the studio could feel it. This was no longer a talk show interview. It was a battle of wills between two men who refused to back down. And as Harry's anger reached its boiling point, it became clear that something was about to explode that would change everything about this night. Maher stood up now too, matching Harry's energy with his own brand of New York grit. You want to talk about your mother? Let's talk about your mother. Diana worked within the system to create change. She didn't run away to California and start a podcast empire. She stayed and fought, even when it was hard, even when it hurt. Harry's face went white, then red, his fists clenching and unclenching at his sides. How dare you? How dare you sit there and lecture me about my own mother when you've never sacrificed anything for anyone in your life? You're a comedian who thinks controversy equals wisdom. I'm a comedian who calls out hypocrisy when I see it. Maher shot back, his voice cutting through the studio like a blade. And what I see is a man who had the chance to be a force for good within one of the world's most influential institutions, and instead chose to become a professional victim. The words hung in the air like a grenade with a pin pulled. Harry's breathing became labored, his chest rising and falling rapidly. For a moment, it looked like he might actually take a swing at the host. The security team positioned discreetly around the studio tensed and moved slightly closer to the stage. Professional victim. Harry's voice was barely controlled now, each word dripping with venom. You want to know about victims? Victims are the people who can't speak up for themselves. Victims are the ones who don't have a platform, who don't have resources, who can't fight back when the machine comes for them. Maher wasn't backing down. And what have you done for those people, Harry? Really? Besides, talk about yourself and your problems. You had access to the highest levels of power and influence, and you walked away from it all because your feelings got hurt. My feelings got hurt. Harry's voice cracked with incredulous rage. My wife was suicidal. Bill. Suicidal. And when we went to the institution for help, they told us it would be bad for the brand. They cared more about their image than her life. The audience gasped audibly at this revelation, but Maher pressed on relentlessly. And that's terrible, Harry. It really is. But you know what? Millions of people deal with mental health issues every day without the resources you have. They don't get to escape to a mansion in Montecito and sign Netflix deals. They have to stay and fight. Harry's composure finally cracked completely. You think this is easy? You think any of this has been easy? We gave up everything. Our home, our family, our country. to protect our children and our sanity. And people like you sit in your comfortable studios and judge us for it. I judge you for becoming exactly what you claim to hate." Maher fired back, his voice rising to match Harry's intensity. "You've become the very media circus you say you wanted to escape. Every interview, every book, every documentary. It's all about you, your pain, your story. Meanwhile, your brother is actually doing the work you abandoned." The mention of William was like pouring gasoline on a fire. Harry's eyes blazed with fury, and he stepped closer to Maher, close enough that the host could see the rage burning in his eyes. "Don't you dare bring my brother into this. You don't know anything about my family dynamics." "I know enough," Maher said, standing his ground despite Harry looming over him. "I know that he's carrying the weight of the crown, while you're carrying the weight of your grudges. Ikino that is, preparing to be king while you're preparing for your next publicity tour." Harry's voice dropped to a dangerous whisper that somehow carried more menace than his shouting. "You have no idea what you're talking about. None. You sit here in your bubble making jokes about things you don't understand, judging people whose shoes you could never fill." "Maybe not," Maher conceded, but his tone remained defiant. "But I know authenticity when I see it, and I know performance when I see it. And everything you've done since leaving the royal family has been one long, expensive performance." The studio fell into an eerie silence as the two men faced off, neither willing to back down. Harry's hands were shaking now. Whether from anger or adrenaline, it was impossible to tell. Maher stood perfectly still, his jaw set, his eyes locked on Harry's. "You want authentic?" Harry's voice was barely above a whisper now, but it carried the weight of years of suppressed anger. "Here's authentic. Every day I wake up knowing that I made the hardest decision of my life to protect my family. Every day I live with the knowledge that I'll never have the relationship with my father and brother that I want because I chose my wife and children over an institution. That would have destroyed us." Maher's expression softened slightly, but his voice remained firm. "And that's noble, Harry. It really is, but you can't have it both ways. You can't claim you want privacy while courting publicity. You can't claim you want to heal relationships while publicly attacking your family. You can't claim you want to move forward while constantly relitigating the past." "I'm not attacking my family," Harry protested, but his voice lacked conviction. "I'm telling my truth about what happened." "Your truth," Maher repeated again, shaking his head. There's that phrase again. "Look, Harry, I get it. You're angry. You feel betrayed. You feel like the system failed you," Bill said evenly. "But at some point, you have to stop being the victim and start being the solution." Harry's face twisted with a mix of frustration and pain. "You think I haven't tried to be the solution? You think I haven't spent every single day since leaving trying to use my platform for something good? Every time I speak up about mental health, social justice, the environment, people like you reduce it to family drama. Because that's all you want it to be." Bill shot back. "Every interview, every speech, every project somehow circles back to your grievances with the royal family. You had the chance to be a global advocate for causes you care about instead. You became a professional whistleblower against your own family." The words hit Harry like a punch. For a moment, he stood frozen, his mouth opening and closing without a sound. When he finally spoke, his voice was thick with emotion and restrained fury. "You know what, Bill? You're right about one thing. I am angry. I'm angry my wife was treated like garbage by people who should have protected her. I'm angry my son will grow up knowing his grandfather's institution chose protocol over compassion. And I'm angry that people like you think that makes me the villain." The tension in the studio was suffocating. Audience members shifted uncomfortably. Some glanced toward the exits. Others raised their phones to record what was clearly becoming television history. Even the camera crew looked rattled. Bill took a step closer, lowering his voice but not his intensity. "I don't think you're the villain, Harry. I think you're a man who's been through hell and is trying to make sense of it. But I also think you're letting your pain turn you into something you don't want to be." Harry's eyes glistened, but his voice stayed steady cold. "Dangerous. And what's that?" "Bill, what am I becoming? Someone more interested in being right than being happy," Bill said quietly. Someone more focused on winning arguments than repairing relationships that matter. The words hung in the air like smoke. For a brief moment, it seemed the confrontation might cool. Then Harry's expression hardened again. You want to know what I'm becoming, Bill? I'm becoming someone who doesn't need your approval or... The media still know I made the right choice for my family. If that makes me the villain in your story, so be it. The battle lines were drawn. Bill circled his desk, never taking his eyes off Harry. You know what your problem is, Harry? You think being right is more important than being effective. You mistake moral superiority for actual achievement. Harry laughed bitterly. Achievement. You've spent your whole career mocking people's lives, while contributing nothing real to the world. I've spent my career holding the powerful accountable. Bill shot back, including spoiled princes who think personal trauma gives them the right to tear down centuries of tradition. Spoiled? Harry's voice cracked with disbelief. You think losing my mother at 12, serving 2 tours in Afghanistan, and watching my wife nearly die under royal pressure makes me spoiled? Bill flinched, but held his ground. I think having every advantage in life and still acting like a victim makes you spoiled. I think using platforms others can only dream of to settle personal scores makes you spoiled. Harry began pacing, running a hand through his hair. You want to talk about platforms? Let's talk about yours. You sit here every week with the chance to discuss real issues: climate change, social justice, mental health, but instead, you choose to tear down people who are actually trying to make a difference. Making a difference? Bill scoffed. From where I'm sitting, it looks like you're making a fortune off your family's misery and calling it activism. Harry's face went pale, then red. You think this is about money? You think I wanted any of this? I had a life. Bill, a purpose. A family I loved, even with its flaws, and I gave it all up, because staying would have killed the woman I love. I respect that sacrifice, Bill said, his tone softening. What I don't respect is how you've weaponized it. Every interview, every book, every documentary, it's another grenade at your family. And you justify it by saying you're helping people. Harry stopped pacing, his fury reignited. You want to know who I'm helping? I'm helping everyone who's ever felt trapped in a toxic system and told to stay for the sake of appearances. I'm helping everyone who's ever been told their mental health doesn't matter. And you could have done that, Bill countered, without burning every bridge behind you. You could have been a voice for change from within instead of destruction from the outside. Harry's composure finally broke. His voice thundered through the studio. The system doesn't change from within. I tried for years to change it. I begged them to adapt, to evolve, to show compassion, and they wouldn't. And they chose their precious protocols over human lives every single time. Harry finished, his voice trembling with fury. The audience sat frozen, some covering their mouths in disbelief. This was no longer a talk show, it was a reckoning. Bill Maher stood motionless, visibly shaken by the raw emotion flooding out of Harry. So you ran away, Bill said quietly. The words, though soft, landed like a thunderclap. When things got hard, you ran to America and started a new life funded by telling the world how terrible your old one was. Harry's eyes filled with tears of rage. I didn't run away. I made a choice, the hardest one of my life. I chose my wife and children over an institution that would have destroyed them. And I'd make that choice again 1,000 times over, even if it means never speaking to your father again. Bill, press it, even if it means your children will grow up not knowing their grandfather, their uncle, their cousins. The question hung heavy in the air. For a moment, Harry's anger faltered, replaced by deep, visible sorrow. But then his jaw set, his expression hardening once more. My children, he said evenly, will grow up knowing their father chose love over duty, authenticity over appearances, truth over tradition. They'll know that when it mattered most, I protected them, instead of sacrificing them to an institution that values image over people. Bill shook his head slowly. And they'll also grow up knowing their father chose public revenge over private reconciliation, that he turned family pain into entertainment for millions. Enough, Harry said, his voice low but lethal. You've crossed every line tonight, Bill. You've questioned my motives, my marriage, my love for my children. and my respect for my mother's memory. But I won't sit here and let you twist reality to make me the villain. I'm not twisting anything, Bill replied, his tone calm, but cutting. I'm just saying, victims don't usually get multi-million-dollar deals for being victims. Heroes don't profit from heroism, and people who want privacy don't give tell-all interviews every few months. Harry stood still, chest heaving, his hands trembling with restrained anger. The silence in the studio was deafening. Only the faint hum of the cameras and the nervous breathing of the crowd filled the air. You know what, Bill? Harry said finally, his voice eerily calm. You're right about one thing. I am angry. I'm angry my wife was treated like garbage. I'm angry my son's security was stripped away out of spite. I'm angry I had to choose between my family's safety and my family's approval. He paused, locking eyes with Bill. But mostly, I'm angry I wasted the last hour trying to explain myself to someone who was never going to listen. Bill opened his mouth to respond, but Harry lifted a hand sharply. No. You've had your say. You've made your points. You've got your confrontation for the cameras. But I'm done playing this game. He began unhooking his microphone, his movements deliberate and final. You want to know what my mother would think about all this? She'd think it's tragic that her son had to choose between his family's love and his family's survival. She'd think it's heartbreaking that speaking the truth about abuse makes you the villain instead of the hero. The microphone pack hit the floor with a dull thud. Harry looked directly at Bill. But most of all, she'd think it's pathetic that a talk show host believes he understands royal life better than the man who lived it. Harry. Harry? Wait. Bill tried, taking a step forward. We can know. Harry cut him off. His voice. Absolutely. We can't. This conversation is over. This interview is over. And my patience with people who think they know my life better than I do, that's over too. He turned toward the exit, pausing only once. You know what the real tragedy is, Bill? You could have had a real conversation tonight about mental health, about reform, about the courage it takes to choose love over legacy. Instead, you chose to be just another voice in the crowd telling me what I should have done. With that, Prince Harry walked off, set shoulders straight, head high past the cameras, the crew. The stunned audience. Bill Maher remained frozen on stage, staring at the closing door. Several long seconds passed before he finally adjusted his jacket, exhaled, and turned back to the cameras. Well, he said quietly, forcing a thin smile. I guess we'll be going to commercial a little early tonight. The red light on the cameras blinked off, but the tension hung in the air long after. What had started as a celebrity interview had turned into something much larger, a clash of worldviews, a battle between pain and principle, between truth and perception. As the audience slowly filed out, whispering in disbelief at what they had just witnessed, one thing was certain. This was a moment that would be talked about for years to come. Bill Maher had gotten his confrontation, but at what cost? And Prince Harry had made his stand. The only question that remained was, had anyone truly heard him?